So Graff and Birkenstein in their book, They Say, I Say, they mentioned how if a student or if anybody were to come to a text and annotate with a bias, that is, they're already going to automatically agree with it or they're already going to negatively put it down, it's going to result in a bad reading. And that's not what you want. You don't want a bad reading. When you annotate or when you summarize something, you don't want to make it appear that you're automatically just repeating, because that's not what the text is trying to do. And you're kind of disrespecting the text in some ways and not giving it its due credence. So in order to avoid looking bad, you should be able to grasp the things that the text is saying. You need to be able to reach into the text, pull out passages or pull out ideas that mean something to you. And you should be able to convey it back in a way that's purposeful and it adds meaning to what the text is saying. So when somebody asks you to annotate a text, what does that really mean? Well, annotations really just mean writing something on the margins, writing information or writing ideas that conveys an idea or conveys what the text is saying. So you're interacting with a text in a way that you're conversing with it. And it's okay sometimes when you're having a conversation to write, I don't know what this means, or I think this means that. So in this video, I'm going to tell you guys some techniques that I think works well when you're annotating, but there's a bunch of different ways to annotate. You can highlight, you can underline, you can star things that are important, you can sing it out loud, you can put it into poems, you can paint it, you can make it a movie, you can, I'm just kidding, you can't really do all that stuff. But essentially, annotating is interacting physically with the text. You want to participate with the conversation you're having with the text. So the technique I'll be talking to you is similar to underlining, highlighting. It's focusing on finding key phrases or key ideas that you can use in the future. And by engaging with the text, you want to do so in a way that you can learn something new from it. You're going to engage with it so you can extract new vocabulary, new phrases, and some new ideas that you can use in your future language. So of course, we need a text to interact with. So the text we'll be looking at in this video is Martin Luther King Jr.'s A Letter to Birmingham Jail. And the reason why this text is considered a text and not really much of a speech or anything like that is the literary aspect of it. So quickly, here's a little bit of context of how those pieces came together. Martin Luther King led a march in 1963 in Birmingham. In April 10th, he was arrested. And then in April 12th, somebody supplied him with a letter that said calling on unity, which was written by 8 different priests or 8 different religious leaders around Alabama. So this letter that was written by the different clergymen kind of denounced Martin Luther King's efforts. They said that he shouldn't have broken the law, and they kind of attacked Martin Luther King in some way. When King was in jail and he read this, he, of course, had to respond in some way. Really, there's 3 things that King didn't really like about that letter. It's the fact that they missed the injustice of Birmingham. It's the fact that they referred to King and his party as outsiders. And it's the fact that they deplored him for breaking the law. And these are things that King felt like it was his duty to uphold. So as I said earlier, there's ways to annotate differently. You can highlight, you can underline, but so a text like this from Martin Luther King, we're going to be picking out his tone and we're going to be responding in a similar way that reflects his tone. This helps us add to the text, and further on when we make our summary, we'll have a lot to work with when we understand how he's talking. So I'm going to read the first paragraph of A Letter to Birmingham, and I'm going to highlight the common words that King uses. And you're going to start seeing kind of a pattern that is going to go into our paraphrase or go into our summary. So King says, "My dear fellow clergymen, while confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across your recent statement calling my present activities unwise and untimely. Seldom do I pause to answer criticism for my work and ideas. If I sought to answer all the criticisms that crosses my desk, my secretaries would have little time for anything other than such correspondence in the course of the day, and I will have no time for constructive work. But since I feel that you're a man of genuine goodwill, and that your criticisms are sincerely set forth, I want to try to answer your statement in what I hope will be patient and reasonable terms." So as you're reading, of course, you want to identify who's Martin Luther King speaking to, and he's speaking to the clergymen. So he's addressing them directly. So along with this, as we can see, a word that King uses repeatedly is answer. So a good formula, a good template is right here, which is the main subject or your main idea is addressing who, in order to describe what and what. So let's go ahead and fill this out. Martin Luther King is answering a statement that critiques his activity in Birmingham, and he's doing so because they are fellow clergymen. So this type of annotation is pretty much a paraphrase, but the paraphrase is doing honor to King's text, and that's what you want to do, is you want to reflect and converse with the text in some way. So moving on real quick, I'm going to jump to King's third paragraph, but in his second paragraph, he does address why he's there in the first place, which is that he was leading an organization. But moving on to his third paragraph, let's pick out some themes that we can annotate. So the third paragraph reads, "But more basically, I'm in Birmingham because injustice is here. Just as the prophets of the 8th century BC left their villages and carried out, 'Thus saith the Lord,' far beyond the boundaries of their own hometowns, and just as the Apostle Paul left his village of Tarsus and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to the far corners of the Greco-Roman world, so am I compelled to carry the gospel of freedom beyond my own hometown. Like Paul, I must constantly respond to the Macedonian call for aid." So what we can see is that King is using the word "like" a lot. So he's trying to relate himself to the previous religious figures who saw it in themselves to lead some kind of movement against injustice or what they perceived as injustice. So King here, what we can paraphrase is that Martin Luther King is comparing himself to the biblical figures who led marches against their own injustice in their period. All right, so that's pretty much it. So the first steps you want to take when you're summarizing something is that you want to begin annotating. Annotating is your conversation with the text. Remember, the most important thing when you start reading a text or annotating a text, you want to approach it with as little bias as you can. You won't be empathetic with the writing. You don't want to come in with an answer in place. It's just going to make your summary sound superficial, fake, and not really good in general. And don't forget, the first steps to writing a good summary is by actually reading the text. You don't want it to just say, "I already know what it is," because your writing is going to look terrible, and the teacher or anybody in general can tell that you did not read. So that's it. Don't forget, always work hard, give your best effort, engage with the text, have a conversation. And I don't really drink lattes, but if I were to write something on my latte, it would say, "I love your latte." All right, peace.